My name is Clea Good, and I'm 29. The middle child. Not middle like peacemaker, middle like furniture. Present, useful, and easy to forget until you need somewhere to set your keys. Easter dinner, March 23rd. The ham was glossy, the glaze catching the light like a trick handle. My mother scrolled her phone, index finger pulling the page as if tugging on an endless strand of thread. Dad had mounted a TV in the dining room for ambiance, he'd said, as if baseball highlights were a mood. My sister Jessica spooned carrots into her toddler's mouth. My brother Kyle wandered the room with a beer, orbiting conversation without landing. I got a job offer, I said, passing the ham. A software engineering job. It's a real chance. I think I'm taking it. That's nice, honey, Mom said, eyes down. I waited for the obvious questions. Where? When? How much? Instead, a replay clip, a toddler squeal, a scrolling thumb, and the late clink of my fork against a plate that suddenly felt like an empty stage. I'm serious, I said. Dad added to the TV. I'm Clea, by the way, in case anyone forgot. I smiled when I said it so it wouldn't sound like a wound. They didn't notice the joke. When I was 12, they left me near Splash Mountain for 45 minutes. When they found me, Mom smoothed my hair and asked why I didn't keep up. I learned 2 lessons that day. In our family, responsibility runs downhill, and if you stop moving, you disappear. I have not stopped moving since. 2 weeks later, May 5th, Mom's birthday, buttercream roses, I tried again. I accepted the job. I'm moving in June, mid-month. Phoenix is hot, Dad mused, eyes on his slice. The pay's great, I said, and I'm ready. That's great, sweetie. Mom tapped a heart on Jessica's phone. Oh, look at that bow, adorable. How far is Phoenix? I asked myself out loud, because apparently I was doing both sides of the conversation. Couple hours, Dad said, cake muffling the math. 4 hours by plane. Driving is longer. I answered, because I am polite, a trained hostess at my own departure. My phone buzzed under the table. Dan, my boyfriend, sent confetti emojis and a quick, proud of you, we'll figure out the distance. He was in San Diego. Long distance would become longer. I should have felt dread. Instead, I felt steadied. He saw me. Another text blinked in from Sophie, his ex, still haunting the edges of our circle. Phoenix, bold. Hope you're not running from something. I stared at that message like it held a riddle. Then I put my phone face down and finished my cake. Memorial Day weekend. Smoke from the grill curled into the blue. Dad flipped burgers like coins, deciding fates. I'm signing the lease this week. Moving trucks booked for June 15th. Good for you, Dad said, flipping. Be careful, speeders in the desert. Yeah, I answered. I hear they're fast. I need help moving my gaming setup later, Kyle called. Dad said, I got you. So fast it made me laugh. A little sharp sound that tasted like the bottom of a coffee pot. I was leaving the state. We were prioritizing an HDMI cable. On June 8th, I sent the group text. Final reminder, I move next weekend. New address, 2847 Desert View Lane, Scottsdale, AZ, 88525. Let me know if you need anything before I go. Jessica posted her son's art project 2 hours later. Mom hearted it. Kyle dropped a pizza meme. My message sat like a package on a wrong porch. Visible, untouched. I screenshotted it. Not to be petty, though I was, but because some part of me suspected I'd need proof that I existed. The day before departure, I went home to say goodbye. Tomorrow, Mom said, penned to a grocery list. Have a safe trip, honey. It's a 2-day drive, I offered. Stop in New Mexico, get water, she said, writing milk. I waited for a hug that didn't arrive. In the garage, Dad arranged tools into a perfect grid. Leaving tomorrow? Yep, he said. Good luck out there. I sat in my truck for a full minute after, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house where I learned to be quiet without being asked. I thought about Dan's last call. Text me when you rest. I'll stay on the line if the road gets dark. I thought about Sophie's message. Hope you're not running from something. And felt a tiny spark of anger. I wasn't running. I was choosing. I left at 6 a.m. alone. 16 hours of asphalt and red rock in a playlist that made the car feel less empty than the kitchen had. Phoenix greeted me with heat like a hand on my sternum. I unpacked boxes. I found the taco place that would ruin me for all other tacos. I bought a fan that sounded like a soft airplane. I walked at twilight when the sky turned the color of old peach rind. I sent photos to the family group chat. The view from my balcony, a saguaro like an exclamation mark, my new badge hanging crooked against my work blouse. No response. I stopped trying after a handful of tries. Silence is heavy. It wears out the muscles you use to lift a phone. Month 3. Dan visited with a carry-on and a grin that made my cramped place look like a penthouse. We learned the city by foot and by the taste of salsa. On the second morning, he made me coffee and said, "Your family will catch up or they won't. You're not a weather alert, Clea. You don't have to flash wed to be real." Do you think I did enough? The question fell out of me before I could stop it. To tell them? You told them 5 times, he said. That's more than enough. The 6th would have been you skywriting. We laughed, and I felt some small knot loosen. It didn't untie, it just stopped choking. Sophie predictably liked one of my Phoenix posts. Comment, "Desert sunsets are pretty, but they fade fast." I blocked her. Not in anger, in self-preservation. I was done with people who spoke to me as if I were a cautionary tale. Month 6, Jessica texted, "Hey, can you pick up Mom's prescription tomorrow? Pharmacy closes early." I stared at the message and then laughed the way you do when the universe tells a joke so on the nose it outpaces satire. "I'm in Arizona," I typed and erased and typed again. "I moved 6 months ago. I told everyone multiple times." 3 dots, stop. 3 dots, stop. "Oh," she finally sent. I put my phone down and looked at the desert. A hawk traced a gray, clean line across the blue. I thought of a bench near Splash Mountain and the childish certainty that someone would notice I'd gone missing. I thought of the Easter ham and the birthday cake and the burgundy ember of the grill. They weren't going to notice unless I was preventing their inconvenience. So I didn't answer Jessica. Not then. By month 9, my life felt like a properly tuned instrument. Work was good. My manager said I had lead energy, which made me sound like a battery. I hiked early before the heat stacked the day. I learned which trails had switchbacks that made room for thinking, and which ones shut your brain off and turned you into calves and breath. Sundays, Dan and I decoded our schedules like a puzzle. We didn't promise forever. We promised next week and kept the promise. I didn't call home. They didn't call me. Birthdays passed, mine unnoticed. Thanksgiving spent with coworkers. Christmas spent with my friend's aunt, who asked questions that peeled me open gently like a sticker you're saving for the right notebook. I posted a Grand Canyon photo at New Year's. Caption, "Year-end adventures." Jessica liked it. She did not comment. At 12 months exactly, March 9th, my mother called. I almost let it go to voicemail. Curiosity 1. "Clea, where are you?" "At home." "You missed Jessica's daughter's birthday party again. Every holiday, every barbecue. What is going on with you?" I sat. The couch sighed under me, the only witness that remembers all my shapes. "Mom," I said, "I live in Arizona. I moved a year ago." Silence on the line. I could almost hear a grocery pen stop mid-letter. "What?" "I told you 5 times. "No, you didn't. I told you at Easter, at your birthday, At the Memorial Day barbecue. I sent the address in the group text. I said goodbye in the kitchen. You told me to drink water. More silence. You should have made it clearer, she said finally, as if clarity were a pie you cut bigger slices from. How much clearer could I be? Clea, we get a lot of messages. Right, I exhaled. A lot of messages. After we hung up, the calls multiplied. Jessica, then Dad, then Kyle with a text that said, WTF, you really moved. As if the desert backdrop in my life were a green screen. I made tea and watched the window turn black. My phone buzzed across the table like a slow-moving insect. I didn't swat it. I didn't pick it up. I let it find stillness. I thought about Dan's question the first night he stayed over. If you could rename the kind of love you want, what would you call it? Visible, I'd said without thinking. He nodded as if I'd said something normal and not a diagnosis. The kettle hissed, the city hummed, and somewhere between the two, I understood something that felt both small and tyrannically true. My leaving was not the test. Their noticing would be. The test so far had 1 grade. In the quiet after the ringing stopped, I screenshotted the group text again. I saved it in a folder called Receipts, and then, only then, did I call Dan. I think the fight I've been avoiding has arrived, I said. His voice came warm, steady. Good. You deserve a family that knows you left the room. I set the mug down and looked out at a sky that refuses to be anything but honest. Tomorrow, I said. I'll start tomorrow. When morning came, Phoenix had that quiet hum it gets before the heat wakes up, a sound like a held breath. I brewed coffee, opened my curtains, and thought, so this is what being forgotten feels like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet. That day, I went hiking early, before the asphalt started to shimmer. At the summit, the desert stretched out below me, endless and indifferent. I pulled out my phone, thinking of all those unanswered texts in the family group chat, still sitting there like unclaimed mail. I typed a new one. Morning view. Then I deleted it before pressing send. What was the point? That night, Dan called. How's the view up there, desert girl? He teased. Hot, empty, beautiful. Empty is not always bad, he said. I know, it's just different when it's voluntary. He paused. Did your mom ever call back after last night? No, but Jessica texted again this morning, said mom's upset. Upset because you moved or because she didn't notice you moved? That's the thing, I said quietly. She can't tell the difference. Dan sighed on the line, the kind of sigh that sounds like empathy. You don't owe them an emotional manual, Clea. I just wanted them to care enough to remember, that's all. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, Mom calling. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity is its own gravity. Hi, Mom. Clea, we need to talk. Her tone was sharp, defensive, like she'd been rehearsing. You made me look ridiculous, telling everyone you moved when you never said anything. I closed my eyes. Mom, I said it 5 times. That's not true. I have screenshots. There was a long pause. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being factual. You've changed, she said softly. Yeah, I think that's the point. After we hung up, I sat in the glow of my lamp for a long time. My phone kept lighting up with messages from Jessica and Kyle, all circling the same question. Why didn't you tell us? I wanted to scream, I did. You just didn't listen. Instead, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and started typing. Not a message, a list. 5 times I told them I was leaving. I wrote every date, every conversation, every response. Then I printed it. Not because I planned to show anyone, just so I could hold the evidence in my hands. Something solid, something real. 2 days later, Dad called. Your mother's upset, he started. I know. She told me. She feels blindsided. I feel invisible. He sighed.
You know how busy things have been. Jessica with the kids, Kyle still finding work. Busy doesn't erase memory. Dad, you just didn't think it mattered. That's not fair. Neither is forgetting your daughter moved across state lines. There was a pause so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said it, the line that cracked everything open. It's not about remembering, Clea. It's about priorities. I froze. What does that mean? He hesitated. We can't always make everything about you. I felt something inside me tilt, a slow, painful realization that he wasn't even trying to be cruel. He believed that. Okay, I guess I'm adjusting my priorities too. Clea, don't be like that. I'm not being like anything. I'm just done chasing people who don't look back. I ended the call before he could respond.
That night, Dan came over with takeout and cheap wine. He didn't ask questions, just listened while I read aloud the list I'd printed. He looked at it for a long moment, then said, "Frame it." "What?" "Frame it. Not for bitterness, for proof. So that next time you start doubting yourself, you'll remember this isn't in your head." I laughed through tears. "You really think I should hang this on my wall?" "Maybe near the door," he said with a half smile, "as a reminder of who actually walks out for you." I didn't frame it, but I didn't throw it away either. I folded it carefully and tucked it in my nightstand. 2 weeks later, Jessica called. "You made Mom cry," she said without greeting. "I didn't make her cry. The truth did." "You're being dramatic again." "There's that word again," I muttered. "Clea, she's worried about you. You haven't called in months." "I moved to another state. None of you noticed for a year." Jessica went silent. Then, quietly, "We thought you were joking." "Do I sound like I joke about life changes?" "I don't know. You never really talk about your life." "Because you never really ask." There it was, the sentence that landed like a confession. Jessica didn't mean it cruelly. She meant it honestly. That was worse, somehow. After we hung up, I walked out onto my balcony. The desert air was still warm, heavy with the scent of dust and orange blossoms. The city lights looked like distant stars pretending to care. I whispered to no one in particular, "You don't get to be angry about my silence when you built it for me." The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Mom, Jessica, even Kyle in a group call. I didn't pick up. For the first time, I let them sit with the silence they'd always left me in. It wasn't revenge. It was symmetry. That night, Dan asked, "How are you holding up?" I shrugged. Some days I miss them. Some days I miss the version of them I hoped they were. He nodded. "That's grief, Clea. Not loss. Just recognition." "Of what?" "That you finally stopped asking for love in the wrong language." His words hit harder than I probably realized. 2 weeks later, Mom called again. "Your sister says you're angry." "I'm not angry. I'm just done repeating myself." "Families argue, Clea. We'll move past it." "I'm not arguing, Mom. I'm accepting." She didn't know what to say, so she filled the silence with the one sentence she thought would fix it. "Your father and I love you." "I know, but you don't see me." For a long time, she didn't respond. Then she whispered, "Maybe I don't know how." "That's a start," I said, and hung up gently. That night, I wrote in my journal, "They hear the noise I make, but not the meaning." Still, something inside me shifted. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, just the faint outline of peace. By the end of month 12, I had stopped waiting for them to call back. I started calling myself back instead, through morning hikes, good books, and dinners that tasted like autonomy. I didn't know it then, but that distance was the only thing that could ever make them truly notice, because soon, very soon, the silence would break and the reckoning would begin. The call came on a Tuesday evening. 1 year and a handful of forgotten holidays since I'd left Ohio. I was slicing vegetables for dinner when my phone buzzed. Mom. I stared at the name. My thumb hovered, ready to ignore it. But then I thought, you can't heal what you won't face. Hey, Mom. Her voice came brisk and trembling. Clea, my father and I just talked with Jessica. You really moved to Arizona? I blinked, knife midair. Mom, I told you 5 times. You didn't. I have proof. What proof? I sent you my lease agreement in the photo. You heart-reacted to Jessica's art project 5 minutes later. Her inhale was sharp, offended. You don't have to throw that in my face. I'm not. I'm reminding you that I existed in that chat. There was a pause, then quieter. You could have made it clearer. I sent you my lease agreement in the photo, Mom. I don't know how much clearer that gets. Well, you know how things get busy. I exhaled. Busy is fine. Forgetting your daughter's new address for a year is something else. There was silence, the kind that makes even air feel heavy. Do you know what hurt most? Not that you didn't visit, not that you didn't call, that you didn't even notice I was gone. Not until it inconvenienced you. That's not fair, Clea. I think it's the fairest thing I've ever said. She hung up. Minutes later, Jessica called. I picked up this one. Curiosity is cruel like that. Clea, Mom's crying. What'd you say to her? The truth. Well, you didn't have to be mean. I wasn't mean. I was specific. Jessica's tone turned sharp. We've been busy. You know how hard it is juggling kids, jobs. I worked full-time too, Jess. I just didn't use that as an excuse to forget birthdays. You're being dramatic. Then why are you calling me? That shut her up for a second. Finally, she said, I just don't understand why you left without saying goodbye. My jaw tightened. I did say goodbye. You just didn't hear it because you were too busy showing Mom something on your phone. She went quiet again. I could almost hear her thinking, scrolling through memories, realizing she couldn't find mine among them. I gotta go, she said quickly. The kids are fighting. Sure, I said softly. Go take care of them. Someone should. She hung up. 5 minutes later, Dad called. Clea, can we talk like adults? Sure, let's do that. Your mother's upset. She's been crying for 2 hours. I'm sorry she's upset? Are you? I am. I'm not sorry for saying what needed to be said. He sighed. Look, you're making a big deal out of this. You feel like we didn't pay attention, but life gets complicated. Jessica's kids, Kyle's job search, your mother's book club. Dad, you're listing everyone's priorities. Do you hear yourself? What do you mean? It sounds like I was never one of them. He didn't answer right away. Then came that line, the same tone he used when explaining why I didn't need braces, but Jessica did. Calm, reasonable, indifferent. It's not about priorities, Clea. It's about perspective. I almost laughed. Perspective. Okay. Then from mine, it looks like I could disappear and no one would notice for 12 months? That's not true. Then prove it. Tell me something, anything, that's happened in my life this year. Silence. Dad? More silence. That's what I thought. He finally said, You're being unfair and you're being predictable. Clea. I'm done, Dad. I ended the call. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my printed list, the 5 times I'd told them. I traced each date with a fingertip, proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Dan walked in from the bedroom, hair messy, eyes soft. They called again. 3 times, same script. He sat beside me, looked at the papers. You're really holding the receipts, huh? Someone has to. He leaned in. You know, sometimes we keep evidence not for them, but for ourselves, so when the gas light starts flickering, we still see the room clearly. I smiled sadly. You always know what to say.
That's because I listen, he said simply. His words hit like a bomb and a bruise all at once. The next morning, Jessica texted me again, meanie asked. Mom's still crying. You owe her an apology. For what? For blindsiding us. I told you 5 times. Whatever, Clea, enjoy your desert. Hope it's worth losing your family. I didn't lose my family. I just stopped pretending I was part of it. She didn't reply. I blocked her number, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation, because I knew if I didn't, the guilt messages would never stop. Later that week, Kyle texted, Bro, what the F? You really moved? I'm not your bro. And yes, a year ago. Why didn't you tell me? You were too busy playing Fortnite, remember? Oh, that was it. Oh, it would have been funny if it weren't so sad. By Friday, the guilt storm was over. The phone stopped buzzing. The desert went back to its silence. For the first time, that silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. 3 days later, Dan came home with something in his hand. A small wooden frame. For the list, he said. I stared at him. You actually made me a frame. You deserve proof that you didn't imagine the neglect. I laughed. You're serious? Completely. He hung it near the front door. The paper inside read in black ink. 5 times I told them I was leaving. Easter dinner, ignored. Mom's birthday. Cake, no questions. Memorial Day, be careful, speeders. Group chat. Unread. The kitchen. Get water. Below, Dan had added his own note in smaller handwriting. Number 6. You told yourself, and you finally listened. I stood there staring at it. Something inside me cracked. Not the painful kind, but the kind that lets light in. A week later, Mom called again. Her voice was tired this time. Clea, I don't want to fight anymore. Then don't. I didn't realize how far you'd gone. I know. I should have paid more attention. The words hung there, fragile, awkward, but real. Thank you, I said. I'm not saying everything's perfect, she continued quickly, but maybe we can start over. We can try, I said carefully. That night I told Dan what she'd said. She actually admitted it, sort of. That's progress. Maybe, I smiled faintly, but I'm not walking backward. He nodded. Good. Moving forward doesn't mean moving closer. It means choosing your direction. And I realized he was right. I wasn't closing the door. I was just standing where there was light. That weekend, I finally did something I'd been avoiding. I called my mother first. It wasn't long, just 10 minutes of small talk about weather and work. She asked if Phoenix was still that hot. I said, still that beautiful. When we hung up, I didn't cry. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a forgotten child trying to earn a seat at the table. I felt like a woman with her own table. Smaller, quieter, but full of peace. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the story wasn't over, because eventually they'd come to see the life they missed, and that would be its own kind of reckoning. It started with a text, simple, cautious, almost shy. Mom, would it be all right if Dad and I visited just for a weekend? We'd stay at a hotel. I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was no. My peace was too hard-won to gamble on nostalgia. But then I remembered what Dan said. Moving forward doesn't always mean moving closer. Sometimes it's just proving you can handle being seen again. So I wrote back, sure, let me know the dates. They arrived on a Friday evening in early October. Phoenix light turns golden that time of year, soft enough to forgive even the harshest edges. When I met them at the airport, Mom was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe she just looked that way because she finally looked at me. Clea, she said, almost whispering. Then she hugged me, the kind of hug that starts tentative and ends desperate. Dad followed,
giving me his standard handshake before pulling me into a half hug. "You look good, kiddo. Healthy." "Arizona agrees with me," I said, smiling. In the car, Mom kept glancing around out the window, at the palm trees, at the roads, at me. "Everything looks so different here," she said. "That's kind of the point." We dropped them at their hotel. She asked if they could see my apartment right away, but I told her tomorrow. Tonight, let's just have dinner. Her eyes softened. Okay. We went to my favorite Mexican restaurant downtown. Open-air patio, string lights, the hum of weekend laughter floating around us. Mom ordered a margarita, Dad a beer. "So," he said, cutting into his burrito, "how's work?" "Good. Actually, I got promoted last month, lead software developer." Dad's eyebrows lifted. "That's impressive." Mom smiled, hand over her heart. "We're so proud of you." I nodded, unsure how to respond. Pride felt strange from people who once couldn't remember my job title, but I accepted it anyway. Then Mom said, "Do you have friends out here?" "Yeah, some from work, some from hiking." "That's good. We were worried you'd be lonely." "I'm not. I'm actually happier here than I've ever been." That landed like a small earthquake. Mom looked down at her drink. Dad cleared his throat. "We're glad you're happy." "Are you?" I asked. He hesitated. "Of course we are." I nodded slowly. Even if it took leaving to feel seen. Mom's eyes glistened. "Clea, please, let's not fight. We're trying." "I know, and I appreciate that. I just need you to understand. I didn't move away from you. I moved toward myself." Dinner went quieter after that, but not tense, just thoughtful. The next morning, I picked them up at 9 o'clock sharp. When we pulled into my apartment complex, Mom gasped. "Oh, honey, it's beautiful here." "It's small," I said, "but it's mine." She stepped inside, looking around like she was touring a memory she'd never been part of. Her eyes landed on the framed paper by the door, the one Dan made me. She read the title softly. 5 times I told them I was leaving. Her face paled. "You kept this?" "Yes," I said. Because for a long time it was the only proof I had that I wasn't invisible. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Clea." "I know," I nodded. She sat on my couch, looked around. The cactus in the corner, the trail photos on the wall, the mug collection labeled with hiking dates. "You built a life here," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "I had to." Dad stood by the window, hands in his pockets. "It suits you," he said. "Feels grounded." "It is." Mom looked up at me. "Do you have everything you need?" "More than I ever did." She smiled through tears. "You sound like someone I'm just now getting to know." I sat next to her. "Maybe now you'll listen long enough to learn who I am." She nodded, eyes wet. "I will." The rest of the weekend surprised me. We didn't talk about blame, not directly. Instead, we hiked Camelback Mountain, we laughed at Dad trying to take panoramic selfies. We ate tacos from the same stand I'd once eaten at alone. At one point, halfway up the trail, Dad stopped, breathing hard, and looked out at the endless sprawl of desert and city. "I get it now," he said. "Get what?" "Why you came here." "It's quiet, but it's not empty. There's a difference." I smiled. "Exactly." That evening we had dinner at my apartment. Takeout spread across my coffee table, candles flickering like the ones we used to light at home, but never really looked at. For once, conversation flowed easily. Work, hiking stories, random memories. When they left that night, Mom hugged me again. "Thank you for letting us come." "Thank you for finally coming." "Can we visit again, maybe in a few months?" "Yeah, we can make that work." She smiled, the kind of smile that trembles because it's trying to hold gratitude and regret at the same time. They flew home the next morning.
A week later, I got a package in the mail. Inside was a framed photo of the three of us at Camelback Mountain, desert behind us, wind in our hair. A note was taped to the back. "Thank you for the best weekend we've had in years. We're proud of you, and we're sorry it took us this long to see you. Love, Mom and Dad." I placed it on the shelf beside Dan's frame. Proof that sometimes even the people who forget you can learn to remember again. A few months later, Christmas came. Mom called a week before. "We're doing Christmas at home this year. Will you come?" I hesitated. "I don't know, Mom. Please, Clea. It wouldn't be the same without you. You had Christmas without me last year." "I know, and that was wrong. We're asking now. That's gotta count for something." I thought about it. The year before, they didn't even notice I wasn't there. Now they were asking. That was progress. "I'll think about it," I said. 2 weeks later, I booked a flight. Christmas morning, I walked into my parents' house for the first time in nearly 2 years. Jessica was there with her kids, Kyle with his girlfriend. The smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air. When I stepped through the doorway, the room went still. Jessica's eyes widened. "You came?" "Yeah," I said softly. "I came." She hugged me tight and wordless. Kyle high-fived me awkwardly. "Good to see you, sis." Then Mom appeared from behind the tree. Walked straight up and hugged me like he meant it. "Welcome home." The word home echoed in my chest. It didn't feel like the house anymore, but the effort, the warmth, felt like family. We opened presents, watched old movies, ate too much food. They asked about my job, my hikes, my life, and for once, they listened. At one point, Mom pulled me aside near the fireplace. "Thank you for coming, honey. Thanks for inviting me. I mean it, Clea. It feels like we're a family again. We're working on it," I said. "And I'm grateful you're giving us the chance." "I'm trying, Mom." "I know. That's all I could ask for." That night, when I boarded my flight back to Phoenix, I looked out at the city lights fading below. I realized something simple but enormous. I didn't need perfection to heal, just participation. They were finally trying, and for now, that was enough. The months after Christmas felt different, lighter somehow. Mom started texting every Sunday morning. "Good morning, honey. How's the weather out there?" Dad sent links to hiking articles. "Thought you'd like this one." Jessica shared pictures of her kids with small captions. They missed their aunt. And Kyle, in his own awkward way, sent memes about family road trips. It wasn't perfect, but it was consistent. And for a family that once forgot I'd moved to another state, that consistency meant everything. Then one morning in April, I got promoted again. Senior lead developer. Dan took me out to celebrate with tacos and tequila at the same spot where my parents had eaten months earlier. "You've built a life here," he said, raising his glass. "Yeah," I smiled, "one that finally feels like mine." That night, I sent a picture of my new office view to the family group chat, just to test the universe. Within an hour, 4 responses came in. Mom: "Congratulations, sweetheart. So proud of you." Dad: "Well-deserved, kiddo." Jessica: "That's amazing, Clea. You inspire me." Kyle: "You're killing it, sis." 4 replies. A year ago, I would have gotten silence. I cried quietly on the couch, tears soft and stunned. Not because of the words, but because I didn't have to beg for them this time. 6 months after Christmas, Mom called with news. "We want to visit again. No hotel this time. If that's okay, we'd like to stay with you." I hesitated. My apartment had 1 bedroom and a couch, but something inside me wanted to say yes. "Sure," I said. "You can take the bed. I'll crash on the couch." They arrived with a suitcase, a bag of homemade cookies, and nervous smiles. Mom cooked breakfast the first morning. Dad fixed a leaky faucet I'd been ignoring for months. We went hiking in Sedona, drove through the desert with the windows down, stopped to take photos of everything, even the roadside cactus. That evening, sitting on my porch as the sky turned to gold, Dad said, "You know, I think leaving was the best thing you ever did." I blinked.
Really? Yeah, he said. You needed space. We needed a wake-up call. Everybody won. Mom nodded. He's right. You showed us what we were missing. We didn't realize how quiet the house had gotten without you. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, I said softly. I know, Mom replied. Sometimes people have to lose something before they see what it's worth. I looked at her, searching. And what was I worth, Mom? She didn't even hesitate. Everything. Her voice broke on the word. I didn't cry, not right away. But something inside me finally unclenched, a small, stubborn knot that had been sitting in my chest since I was 12, since Splash Mountain, since every birthday they forgot. Thank you, I whispered. No, she said. Thank you for giving us another chance. 3 years after I first moved to Arizona, I got an offer I never expected, a VP position in Seattle. Bigger city, bigger role, bigger risks. When I called Mom to tell her, I half expected disappointment. Instead, she laughed, a light, proud laugh that filled my chest with warmth. Seattle, that's incredible, Clea. You should take it. You're not upset? Why would I be? I'm moving again. Sweetheart, you're an adult. You go where your dreams take you. We'll visit. You'll visit. It'll be fine. For the first time, she didn't make my leaving about her loss. She made it about my growth. Thanks, Mom. When do you leave? 2 months. Then we'll come out before you go. One last Arizona visit. They did. We hiked Camelback again, just like before. We ate at the same taco place, laughed at the same mural on the wall, took one last photo in front of my apartment. At the airport, Dad handed me an envelope. Open it later. I did. Mid-flight, somewhere over Nevada. Inside was a handwritten card and a check for $5,000. For your new adventure. We're proud of you, not just for what you've done, but for who you've become. Love, Mom and Dad. It wasn't the money that made me cry. It was the proof. This time, they remembered to show up. 6 months into Seattle, Jessica messaged the family group chat. Jess, family reunion idea. Next summer, Arizona. We'll rent a cabin near your old place. Everyone wants to see the desert through your eyes. Me. That's actually really sweet, Jess. Jess, so you'll come? Yeah, I'll come. That summer, we all met in Arizona. Mom, Dad, Jessica, her husband and kids, Kyle and his fiancée. We hiked the trails I used to walk alone. We ate at my favorite taco spot. We stood on my old balcony looking out at the same sunset that once felt like my only friend. At dinner that night, Kyle raised his glass. To Clea. For being brave enough to leave, for forcing us to look at ourselves, and for never giving up on family. Everyone echoed, To Clea! I laughed, embarrassed, but moved. All right, enough emotional ambushes, I said, wiping my eyes. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. You saved us, you know. I shook my head. No, Mom. I just stopped waiting for you to notice. She smiled softly, and that's what saved us. Later that night, we sat on the porch, just me and her, watching the horizon darken into violet. This place is special, she said. It saved me, I said quietly. No, she corrected. You saved yourself. This place just gave you space to do it. We sat in silence for a long while. Then I looked at her, half smiling. Mom, yes, if you ever stop seeing me again, I'm moving to Alaska. She laughed through tears. Deal. 5 years after I left Ohio, I stood in my Seattle apartment, walls lined with photos. Camelback Mountain, 3 of us smiling. Side by side, they told the story of loss, choice, and repair. I used to think love was about staying. Now I know. Sometimes it's about leaving first so the people who truly love you can find their way back. And they did. For once in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. And that was enough.